Hello, and welcome to my channel Stories of Injustice. Some stories don't scream when they start. They whisper, soft, almost invisible, until you realize they were never quiet at all. This is a story about a teenage boy, a sidewalk, a sandwich bag, and how a walk home from work turned into a national reckoning. If you're new here, drop a comment below, tell us where you're listening from. I'm tuning in from Detroit tonight. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around until the end. Because what happened in Marlow, Illinois didn't just shatter one family's world. It exposed a truth a lot of folks already knew, but couldn't prove. Until now. Let's start with the town. Marlow, Illinois. Population, 18,231. Give or take. It's one of those places where the air always smells faintly of cornfields and diesel fuel. Where the local AM radio still plays gospel at noon, and the hardware store downtown sells American flag decals for $1 apiece. There's a Walmart on the edge of town, a diner that hasn't changed its menu since 1984, and a high school football team that's more organized than the city council. It's a place where people wave from porches even if they don't know your name. And if you're white, that wave usually means something simple. You belong. But for folks like the Fields family, black, working class, rooted but never fully accepted, belonging came with conditions. They lived in a second-floor apartment over an old tax office on Cedar Street. The kind of place with thin walls, crooked blinds, and a front step that creaked when you leaned too hard. It was home. 17-year-old Jamari Fields had grown up in that apartment, shared a room with his little brother since diapers. His mother, Denise, worked double shifts at the nursing home. And when Nia, his older sister, left for law school in Chicago, Jamari took up the slack without complaining. He worked weekends at Mama Lucia's diner, bussing tables, washing dishes, folding pizza boxes in the back until his knuckles cracked and his shoes reeked of garlic powder. He didn't mind the work. In fact, he liked it. It gave him time to think. Jamari was quiet. The kind of kid who kept his head down, but eyes wide open. He was smart, math especially. Had a mind for patterns, logic. His science teacher said he'd make a hell of an engineer if he could keep his grades up and stay out of trouble. And that was the thing about Marlow. Trouble had a way of finding black boys who walked alone at night, even when they were just walking home. On Saturday nights, the sidewalks near Main Street got quieter after 9 p.m. Businesses locked up. Porch lights flickered off one by one. And if you didn't have a car, your footsteps were the only sound for blocks. That's when Jamari walked. From the back exit of Mama Lucia's, past the shuttered Jiffy Lube, then across Elmwood Park, cutting diagonally to save time. He knew the shortcuts. He knew the rules. Keep your hoodie down. Don't touch your phone. Always carry your work badge. And still, it wasn't enough. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. This night started like any other. A mild March evening, warm for Illinois, the air soft with the smell of melted snow and fresh-cut onions from the diner's back door. Jamari clocked out just after 10:15. He'd stayed late to help clean up after a birthday party that got loud and messy. He tucked a leftover meatball sub into a brown paper bag, zipped his coat, and stepped into the night. His earbuds stayed in his pocket. Not tonight. The silence felt better. 3 blocks later, he crossed into the park. The sky was clear. No moon, just stars. He was thinking about his algebra final next week, about the shoes he wanted to buy with his next paycheck, about how his mom had looked extra tired this morning, and he'd left her a sticky note. Don't forget to eat. He didn't see the headlights. Not yet. That comes next. But let's pause here. Because what happens in the next 5 minutes will change everything. For Jamari. For his family. For Marlow. And the scary part? It's happened before. Just not with cameras watching. Jamari stepped into the park with the kind of quiet that only small towns have after 10 p.m., the kind where even your footsteps feel too loud. Elmwood Park was mostly empty. Just a few bare trees stretching long shadows under dim yellow lamps. In summer, it buzzed with pickup games, cookouts, and little kids racing between swings. But in March, it was still half asleep. The benches were cold. The grass wore a thin coat of frost. Jamari cut across the central path, sticking to the edge where the light didn't quite reach. His backpack bounced gently with each step, the plastic container inside rustling with what was left of the meatball sub. He'd been saving it for his little brother. His hoodie was down, coat zipped, work badge clipped neatly to the front. Just like Nia always told him. Be careful, Mari. Don't give him an excuse. He had one headphone in, not playing music, just hanging. It gave the illusion of distraction, but his senses were sharp. He knew every turn of this route. The park. The sidewalk past the closed daycare. The side street where the pavement cracked like spider webs. He'd walked this way at least 50 times. Tonight should have been no different. Halfway through the park, he passed under one of the old lamp posts. The light buzzed, flickered, then steadied again. He glanced up, then down at his phone. 10:38 p.m. He wasn't in a hurry, but he wasn't strolling either. The faster he got home, the better. His mom would still be up, probably in her robe, watching the news on low. She never went to bed until he walked through that door. She said she just couldn't sleep until she knew he was safe. That thought, safe, echoed a little too loudly in his chest. Jamari reached the far end of the park. The street beyond it was quieter than usual. No cars. Not even the faint hum of traffic on Route 14. Just the buzz of that flickering lamp behind him. He checked the crosswalk light. Waited for the signal. Then he saw it. Headlights. Just one pair, slowly rolling toward the park entrance from the opposite side. A cruiser. Standard black and white. Crown Vic model. Nothing unusual. Except the way it crept. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just slow. Purposeful. Jamari's breath caught. Not fear. Not yet. But alertness. Awareness. He took his hands out of his pockets. The cruiser coasted along the curb. It didn't flash its lights. Didn't tap the horn. Just pulled up, maybe 15 feet away, and stopped. He glanced behind him. No one. He glanced ahead. 1 block to Cedar Street. 1 block to home. The driver door creaked open. Jamari didn't move. The park was silent except for the low hum of the cruiser's engine. A figure stepped out. Stocky build. Pale face. Black gloves. Utility belt heavy at his waist. No flashlight. No clipboard. No words. Just a long look. Jamari kept his body still, his palms open, relaxed at his sides. His badge caught the faint light from the lamp. Another 30 seconds passed. Maybe less. But it felt longer. Then the officer took a step forward. Jamari heard the crunch of gravel beneath his boots. He was still about 10 feet away. Close enough to make out the shape of his holster. Close enough to see that there was no smile. No curiosity. Just that quiet, unreadable stare. Jamari tried to keep his breathing steady. His phone vibrated, just once. A text. Probably his mom. He didn't check it. Instead, he raised his voice gently. "Evening, sir." The officer didn't respond. Jamari tried again. Is there something wrong?" Still no answer. The officer just walked one more step forward, then stopped again. That's when Jamari noticed the fingers on the man's right hand, curling slightly. Not on the gun, but close. Tension. Trained behavior. Jamari's body went rigid, but only inside. On the outside, he remained still. Careful. He knew that stance. That distance. This wasn't a conversation. This was a test. And whatever came next would define more than just the rest of Jamari's night. It might define his life. The officer stopped just a few feet in front of Jamari now. His boots were planted wide, shoulders squared like he was ready for a fight, though Jamari hadn't moved. The man's name tag read R. Braxton. Jamari recognized the name vaguely from around town. Braxton was known in Marlow, mostly through whispers, a sheriff's deputy who'd transferred into the city force 2 years ago. Folks in Jamari's neighborhood said he had a temper, said he didn't like attitude, which in Marlow usually meant he didn't like black folks who talked back. "You live around here?" Braxton's voice was sharp, thick with authority, not the kind that calms, but the kind that corners. Jamari nodded carefully. "Yes, sir. Just up the block, Cedar Street." Braxton's eyes scanned him top to bottom. "Got ID?" "I do." Jamari kept his hands loose at his sides, voice calm. "It's in my backpack." "May I?" "Don't move." The deputy's hand shifted, brushing the top of his holster. "You reaching for something now?" Jamari went still. His breath tightened in his chest. "No, sir. I was just letting you know where it is." Braxton squinted at him. "Smart mouth, huh? You always talk like that to cops." "No, sir." "What you got in the bag?" The deputy jerked his chin toward the backpack hanging off Jamari's right shoulder. "Just my work uniform. And some food I'm bringing home." Braxton took a step closer, then circled slightly, positioning himself to Jamari's side. Not directly in front anymore. "You come through this park often?" "Yes, sir. It's the fastest way home from Mama Lucia's." Braxton tilted his head, mock amusement flickering across his face. "That's what they're calling it now? Mama Lucia's?" Jamari blinked. "I'm sorry. Place you work at. That's what you're saying it is." "Diner job." "Yes, sir." I bus tables. Saturday shift. Every weekend. Braxton's eyes narrowed. You always walk alone? Out here, this late? Usually, yeah. Seems like poor judgment. Don't you think? Jamari stayed quiet. He knew better than to answer that. Braxton took another step. He was close now. Too close. You look nervous. Jamari looked him in the eye, then down slightly, non-threatening, just like his sister taught him. I'm just trying to get home, sir. Braxton sniffed. You match the description of someone we're looking for. Burglary suspect. Blackmail, late teens, dark hoodie. Jamari felt his stomach tighten. Sir, I just got off work. I've been at Mama Lucia's since 5. You got a time card to prove that? It's in the system. They can call. That ain't what I asked. Jamari's voice stayed level. I'm not who you're looking for. Braxton stepped forward again. Now he was directly beside Jamari, peering at the badge clipped to his coat. This supposed to be funny? Braxton's voice dropped, just enough for the menace to settle in. Wearing a name badge like that? Like that makes you a model citizen or something? No, sir. Maybe you swiped it off some other kid. Maybe you're smarter than you look. I work there. They know me. You can't. Braxton cut him off. You people always got an answer, don't you? Jamari swallowed hard. I'm not trying to cause trouble. No. Braxton took another half step around, now behind him. Because right now, you're out here looking real suspicious. Jamari's pulse was pounding in his ears. He kept his hands in plain sight. I don't have anything on me. Nothing illegal. I've done nothing wrong. You done nothing wrong? Braxton repeated mockingly. Then how come every time I turn on the news, some kid like you is running from the scene? Huh? You good kids just keep finding your way into bad neighborhoods. Jamari's voice cracked slightly. This is my neighborhood. Braxton let out a low chuckle. Yeah, sure it is. Then came the silence. Not long. Just heavy. Like the air itself was waiting. Tell you what, Braxton said finally. Why don't you go ahead and take that backpack off real slow and set it down? Let's make sure you're not carrying anything you shouldn't be. Jamari didn't move yet. Sir, I'd feel more comfortable if another officer was present. Or, excuse me. Braxton's voice shot up. You making demands now? No, sir. Braxton's hand twitched toward his belt again. Either you're hiding something, or you're getting cute. Either way, I'm not about to stand out here debating you. I'm not hiding anything. You sure about that? Jamari stared at the ground. Yes. Then, softer. You just don't want to believe me. Braxton took a long breath. All right. Hands on your head. Turn around. Now. Jamari hesitated. That half-second pause. It wasn't defiance. It was fear. And it would cost him. Jamari didn't move. Just for a second. A breath. A pause that wasn't even half a second long. He was processing, calculating. But that pause, that was all it took. Officer Braxton's voice cracked through the air like a whip. I said turn around. Before Jamari could react, a hard hand grabbed the back of his hoodie, yanking him sideways. His balance broke, and he stumbled, backpack slipping off one shoulder. Wait, he gasped, hands instinctively rising, not in resistance, but in confusion. Wrong move. You resisting now? Braxton's voice was close, spit-laced, snarling. No, sir. I'm not. Too late. Jamari barely registered the second cruiser pulling up behind them, tires grinding against the curb. 2 doors opened. More boots. More steps. By the time Jamari turned, Officer Braxton had already drawn his baton. It cracked across the back of Jamari's knees before he could blink. The pain was sharp and immediate. He dropped. Hard. Knees slammed into the pavement. The sound of bone against concrete. He winced, cried out, not screaming, but enough to make it real. Enough to make it human. Face down. Braxton barked. Hands behind your back. Jamari tried to comply, even as the shock of the fall vibrated through him. I'm trying. I didn't do anything. Please. Another voice, gruff, older, unfamiliar, came from the second officer approaching. Let me guess, he sneered. He said he was just walking home. Jamari heard the mockery in his voice. Heard the boots stepping closer. Braxton knelt with a knee pressed into Jamari's spine too hard, not for restraint, but for punishment. You think we're stupid? Braxton growled. You match the description. You're out here at night, and you want me to believe you were just grabbing takeout? I work at Mama Lucia's. You can call. The second officer grabbed Jamari's backpack and tore it open, yanking out the food container, tossing it aside like trash. He appended the contents onto the ground, headphones, a time card, receipts, nothing threatening. Yeah, the officer muttered, You really look like a student of the month." He held up Jamari's lanyard badge between two fingers like it was some kind of joke. "Look at this crap," he said. "Employee of the week. What is this? Affirmative action for busboys." Jamari gritted his teeth. His cheek was pressed against the cold sidewalk now, mouth half open, breathing through dust and salt and crumbs from the sandwich now crushed beside him. "I didn't do anything," he said again. His voice was quieter now, but still steady. Still there. That's when Braxton leaned down, voice low, venomous. "You know what your problem is," he said. "You walk around here like you belong. Like this place owes you something." The handcuffs clicked tight around Jamari's wrists, too tight, cutting skin. "You kids don't understand. You don't run this town." The second officer was already on the radio. 10:55, male suspect in custody. Possible narcotics, resisting. Standby for transport. Jamari blinked. The words echoed. "Narcotics," he breathed. "I don't." "What?" Braxton pulled him to his feet, gripping his arm so hard Jamari winced again. The man yanked his backpack off the ground and shoved it at another officer. "You tossed something," Braxton said coldly. "Right back there by the bench." "That's not true." Jamari gasped. "I didn't. I never." "You think we didn't see it?" He was being walked now, not led, dragged, toward the second cruiser. A small crowd had begun to form across the street. A couple standing on a porch. A man with his phone out. Another woman watching through a screen door. Braxton noticed. He straightened Jamari up a little, wiped his glove on the back of the teen's coat, and changed his voice, just a bit. "Louder now. For show. This could have gone different if you cooperated, son," he said with mock authority. "But you made your choice. Stop lying." Jamari shouted, finally. "I didn't do anything." He was pushed into the back of the squad car before the door slammed shut. The windows were dark, but not dark enough to hide the tears he blinked back. Not loud sobs. Just the kind that come when the adrenaline crashes, when the truth sets in. They'd already decided who he was, and they didn't care about facts, about proof, about dignity. In that moment, Jamari wasn't a son. He wasn't a student. He wasn't even a person. To them, he was a threat. And to Marlow PD, threats needed to be silenced. Nia Fields hadn't gone to bed. She rarely did when Jamari was working late. She said she liked to keep the porch light on, so he knows I'm waiting. It was almost midnight, and the apartment was quiet except for the low murmur of the television in the next room, some news recap she wasn't really watching. Her eyes kept flicking to the clock above the stove. 11:52 p.m. Too late. Too long. She picked up her phone and dialed his number for the third time. Straight to voicemail. Then she tried texting. "You okay, baby? Let me know when you get close." Lights on. Nothing. She was about to dial again when the knock came. Not hard. Just 3 sharp raps. Her heart stuttered. No one came to the apartment this late unless it was bad news. She opened the door slowly. A uniformed officer stood there, not Braxton, not the one who had hurt her son, but another one from the Marlow PD she didn't know well. "Mrs. Fields?" he asked flatly. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her face said it all. "Your son Jamari's been detained," the officer said. "He's at the station." "Detained?" Denise echoed, voice tight. "What for?" There was a suspicious activity report. He matched a description. "He's safe. You can come down now." He handed her a small slip of paper with the time and the address of the station. Nothing more. No explanation. No apology. As he walked away, Denise stood frozen in the doorway, hand pressed against the frame like she needed the wall to stay upright. The wind rushed past her into the apartment, cold and indifferent. She closed the door, but her world was already wide open now. Torn apart. 3 hours north, Nia Fields was still at her desk in Chicago when the text came through. It was simple, and it shattered her breath. They took Jamari. She stood so fast her chair tipped backward. She was already grabbing her bag before she even read the rest. Said he had a weapon. Said he matched someone. They cuffed him. At the station now. Can't get anyone to tell me what's happening. Come home. That last line. That was the one that broke her. Because her mom never asked for help. Nia was 2 years out of law school. She had taken a job with the Midwest Justice Collective because she wanted to fight back from inside the system. Civil rights litigation. Police misconduct. Systemic reform. The story she read all day, the videos, the court records, the broken families, those weren't just work. They were personal. And now it was her brother. She threw on a coat, barely locked the door, and was in her car within 5 minutes. Traffic lights blurred past her windshield as she sped south on I-5. 57, tires humming like thunder. Her hands gripped the wheel harder than she meant to. Her mind raced faster than the engine. She kept thinking of him, not how he looked now, in the back of some squad car, but how he looked last weekend, sitting on the edge of his bed, explaining a physics problem to their little cousin. His head tilted, eyebrows scrunched, using his phone flashlight to draw diagrams on the wall like a shadow puppet show. He was patient, gentle, always had been. She thought about his voice cracking when he got into honors math. The way he covered his smile with his hand like he was embarrassed by his own success. Now she could picture it too clearly, his hands behind his back, that quiet panic in his eyes, the confusion, the shame. She'd seen it too many times before. In body cams, in mugshots, in depositions, but never like this, never this close. Back in Marlow, Denise sat in the police station lobby with her coat still on. The plastic chairs squeaked when she shifted. The fluorescent lights above buzzed like gnats. The man at the front desk hadn't looked at her since she walked in. She'd asked to see Jamari. They told her she'd have to wait. She asked if he was okay. They said he's fine. She asked what he was being charged with. The man just blinked and said, "We're processing." She was a nurse, a mother, a taxpayer, a woman who had never missed a shift and had never raised her voice to a single soul in that town. And yet here she sat, being treated like a criminal because her son dared to walk home from work while black. Her hands shook, not with fear, but with rage, with helplessness. And then the door opened. Nia stepped in like a storm contained in a wool coat. Straight spine, eyes like glass, no makeup, no smile, just fire. "Where is my brother?" she asked before the door even closed behind her. The man at the desk looked up. "Name, Jamari Fields. Brought in less than an hour ago by a Deputy Braxton." The man hesitated. "Are you legal representation?" "Yes," Nia said flatly. "And I'm also his sister. So before I make my next call to the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ, I'd like to know if he's been charged, if he's been Mirandized, and if he's had access to a phone." The officer blinked. The rhythm of the room changed. You could feel it. A shift. Denise looked up at her daughter, lips trembling. "They said he had drugs, Nia? A weapon?" "No, Mama," Nia said quietly. "They said that. Doesn't mean it's true." She turned back to the desk. "I want to see him. Now." And just like that, the tone shifted again. Because the Marlow Police Department had no idea who just walked through their door. The man behind the glass didn't speak for a long moment. His fingers hovered over the keyboard like he was searching for a different answer than the one he knew he had to give. Then, reluctantly, he looked up. "Wait here." He disappeared through a side door, and Nia was left staring at the empty space he left behind, jaw tight, fists clenched at her sides. She didn't sit down. She didn't blink. She just stood there, absorbing the sterile chill of the lobby. She could feel every hum of the overhead lights, every scrape of the clock's second hand ticking toward the next injustice. Her mother sat quietly in the hard plastic chair beside her, arms wrapped around her own waist like she was trying to hold herself together. Nia didn't speak. Not yet. Because if she opened her mouth now, the words would come out as fire. After 3 long minutes, the door opened again. A second officer, a woman this time, heavy-set, with tired eyes, motioned toward a hallway. "This way," she said. Nothing else. No apology. No explanation. Just that blank, mechanical tone. As they walked down the corridor, the air changed. Cooler. Tighter. The kind of atmosphere built to make people feel small. The walls were pale gray, the floors scuffed from years of boots and dragging feet. Nia moved with precision. Her heels echoed sharply against the linoleum. Her coat flared slightly with each step, like a cape. The officer didn't say a word. They reached a door with a small window. The officer opened it. Jamari was sitting at a metal table. Alone. His hands cuffed in front of him, a small bandage over one eyebrow. His backpack sat on the floor beside him, half unzipped. The sandwich bag lay crushed in the corner. His head was down, shoulders hunched. He looked smaller than she remembered. Nia stepped inside, her voice soft but firm. "Jamari." His head snapped up. For a second, he didn't believe what he saw. Then he exhaled. Not relief, release. The kind that comes when you've been holding your breath too long. "Nia," he whispered. She moved fast, pulling out the chair across from him, dropping her bag onto the table. She leaned in close. "I'm here. You're okay. We're going to fix this." Jamari's voice cracked. "I didn't do anything. I know. They said I threw something. That I had drugs. A weapon. But I didn't, Nia. I swear. She reached across the table, took his cuffed hands into hers. I know, baby. I know. You don't have to convince me. We're going to make this right. His eyes watered, but he didn't cry. He hadn't cried yet. Not when they slammed him to the ground. Not when the cuffs bit into his wrists. Not when they shoved him into the back of the cruiser like a bag of trash. But now, with his sister sitting across from him, with her steady hands and her even steadier voice, something cracked. I was just walking home, he said again. That's all. Nia nodded, her voice low and sharp. And they're going to answer for that. She turned slightly toward the window, where she knew the camera was watching. Knew someone on the other side of the glass was listening. Has he been read his rights? She called out. Silence. Then a tinny speaker clicked on. He was informed of. Was he read his rights? Yes or no? Pause. No, the voice admitted. Nia smiled, cold and full of teeth. Thank you. She turned back to Jamari. They're rattled, she said. That's good. Let them panic. Jamari looked up. You think they'll try to charge me with something? They already did. But they're sloppy. There's no body cam footage from Braxton's cruiser. That's not standard. That's intentional. Jamari looked confused. What do you mean? They didn't expect to be challenged, Nia said. They thought they could rough you up, write a vague report, toss you in holding for a night, and send you home scared. But they forgot one thing. What? She squeezed his hand. You have me. Outside the room, the station was shifting. Word was spreading. There were lawyers in the lobby now. Community organizers outside the door. Someone had tweeted a photo of Jamari being shoved into the cruiser, blurry, shaky, but enough. Enough to get attention. And attention was the last thing the Marlow PD wanted. Nia stepped out of the room 10 minutes later. Her voice was calm, but the fire hadn't dimmed. She walked straight to the sergeant on duty. You're going to release my brother. Tonight. He started to protest, but she raised a hand. Don't. I've already spoken to the legal director of the Justice Collective. We're filing a civil rights complaint in the morning. False arrest. Excessive force. Racial profiling. And if you don't let him walk out of here tonight, we're adding unlawful detention to the list. The sergeant blinked. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this. You think just because you went to law school? I think because I know the law, Nia snapped. Which is more than I can say for the officer who shoved my brother's face into the sidewalk for walking home with a sandwich. He didn't respond. She leaned closer. And here's the part you really need to hear. This doesn't go away. Not now. Not tomorrow. And not until the entire country sees what kind of justice you practice in this building. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Because every word was a warning. Every word was a promise. It was nearly 2 a.m. when Jamari walked out of the Marlow Police Department. His wrists still bore the faint impressions of the cuffs. His backpack was in his hand, half-zipped, crushed sandwich container still inside. He didn't speak at first. Just blinked at the floodlights in the parking lot like the world was suddenly too bright. Nia walked beside him, one hand resting gently on his shoulder. Denise stood at the edge of the sidewalk. The second she saw him, she ran forward, arms outstretched. He let her hold him. He didn't cry this time. But he didn't let go either. Behind them, the front windows of the police station glowed with pale light. Inside, officers watched the family reunite but didn't step out. They didn't say a word. Because they knew the story had already slipped out of their hands. Nia had made sure of that. By sunrise, 3 civil rights attorneys had confirmed they were offering support. Nia had already filed a formal complaint with the Illinois Attorney General's office. The Midwest Justice Collective released a short statement on their site. We are representing a minor who was wrongfully arrested, physically assaulted, and racially profiled by the Marlow Police Department. All legal remedies are on the table. News traveled fast. And so did video. That shaky, blurry footage taken from across the street, the one where Jamari was slammed against the cruiser and cuffed, had hit local Twitter accounts by morning. The timestamp, the sound of his voice protesting, the phrase possible narcotics muttered on radio, it was all there. And it was enough. Enough for the story to grow legs. Enough to pull in a city that had been quiet too long. By the time Nia got back to the apartment, the porch light was still on. Morning light had begun to creep across the cracked sidewalk, and the street looked like any other sleepy Sunday. But inside, the apartment felt different. Jamari sat at the kitchen table, slowly eating toast his mother had made, though he barely tasted it. Nia sat across from him, laptop open, eyes scanning lines of legal code, case precedents, and Marlowe's own departmental policies. He never read you your rights, she said. Not once. Jamari shook his head. He just told me to shut up and get on the ground. He didn't log the arrest correctly. There's no mention of probable cause in the report. Just matched a description. He never told me what description. Just that I looked suspicious. Nia paused. Suspicious, she repeated, her voice dripping with cold fury. Suspicious for what? Wearing a coat and walking home after work. Jamari didn't answer. He just looked down. Nia reached across the table. Hey, she said softly. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. But you're not alone, okay? You're not just a headline. You're my brother. He nodded. Then his voice broke slightly. You think it's gonna matter? Nia blinked. What do you mean? I mean, he said, I know you're doing all this stuff, but it's not like this hasn't happened before. To other people, black kids get arrested for nothing all the time, and it just disappears. His words weren't bitter, just tired. The kind of tired that settles in your bones. Nia swallowed hard. Not this time, she said. Because this time, we fight. And not just for you, but for every kid this town's tried to silence. Jamari didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes changed. Just a little. A flicker of something returning. By noon, reporters started calling. Local first, then regional. By 4 p.m., the Marlowe Police Department had received over 70 calls from journalists, attorneys, and state officials requesting comment. The department released a carefully worded statement. An investigation is underway regarding an encounter between officers and a local juvenile. The department takes allegations of misconduct seriously. No apology. No names. Just vague words meant to buy time. But it was too late for that. Outside the station, small groups had begun gathering. People from Jamari's school, from his church, people who had heard the whispers over the years and were finally ready to speak. By evening, a young woman stood on the sidewalk with a sign that read, "Walking while black shouldn't be a crime." Next to her, an older man held a placard that simply said, "We believe Jamari." In the living room, Nia sat with Denise, both of them watching the news as a reporter outside the police department gave an update. The banner along the bottom of the screen read, "Breaking, civil rights complaint filed against Marlowe PD in teen's arrest." Denise reached for Nia's hand. "You're doing this," she whispered. Nia didn't answer. She was already thinking 10 steps ahead. Tomorrow she'd file the federal complaint. The day after that, a press conference. She was planning motions, legal strategy, public support, discovery requests. Because this wasn't just about Jamari anymore. This was about every mother who stayed up late with the porch light on. Every kid who walked home and prayed not to be seen. Every name that didn't make the news. Every story that got buried. They thought they were just arresting another black boy. They were wrong. They had picked the wrong family. And now, the whole country was watching. By Monday morning, the steps outside the Marlowe Police Department didn't look like a sidewalk anymore. They looked like a line in the sand. What started with a dozen people on Sunday had grown to more than 50 overnight. High school classmates of Jamari, church members, local NAACP organizers, teachers, parents, strangers who'd seen the video online and showed up holding signs that read, "Hands off our kids. Justice for Jamari. This stops here." And standing near the front, bullhorn in hand, was a woman who had once tutored Jamari in 8th grade math. Her voice cracked with emotion, but her words were steady. Every child in this town deserves to walk home without fear. Jamari Fields could have been my son, could have been yours. So we're here to say enough. Across the street, the police station windows were shuttered. No officers came out. Not yet. The brass inside had gone quiet. But the silence wasn't protecting them anymore. It was cornering them. Inside the apartment on Cedar Street, Nia stood at the kitchen table, sifting through the files she had begun pulling. Arrest reports, court dockets, testimonies from families who'd called her that morning. It wasn't just Jamari. There was a 16-year-old boy named Kareem who had been arrested for loitering while waiting for his mom outside the grocery store. A Latina teen, Sophia, tackled outside a gas station by officers who claimed she fit a description. No charges were filed, but her knee was dislocated. She still limped. A black college student home for the summer who had been pulled over 4 times in 3 weeks and cited once for driving too cautiously. Their names had never made the news, but now they were calling Nia, whispering their stories, offering their pain, and she was listening. "You see this?" she said, lifting a manila folder and showing her mom. These are patterns. They're not accidents. Denise stood by the counter, watching her daughter with pride and worry tangled together. How far are you going to push this, baby? She asked softly. Nia looked up, her voice low but clear. All the way. At noon, Nia stood in front of the crowd outside the station. She didn't use a mic. She didn't need one. My name is Nia Fields, she began, and 4 nights ago, my brother was arrested, assaulted, and humiliated for the crime of walking home after work. A hush fell over the crowd. The police claimed he had a weapon. They lied. They claimed he resisted. They lied. They said he matched a description. He didn't. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the protesters. I'm not just here as his sister. I'm here as a civil rights attorney. And I'm telling you, what happened to Jamari is not unique. It's systemic. And we're done pretending otherwise. She pointed behind her, toward the station. They want to wait this out. Let the news cycle pass. Hope we get tired. She paused. We're not getting tired. We're getting louder. Applause broke out. Chants began again. Justice for Jamari. Justice for Jamari. Inside the station, Captain Rhodes stood at the window, his jaw tight. He had taken over the department 5 years ago. Quiet, calculating. The kind of man who kept the ugliness hidden under procedure. But even he could see it now. They were losing control. He turned to the officer beside him. Where's Braxton? The officer hesitated. He hasn't reported in since Saturday. Find him. What they didn't know, what almost no one knew yet, was that Braxton had a file. One that had been sealed. Disciplinary records from another town. Use of force incidents, internal warnings. One involving a minor that never made it to court but was buried in an administrative transfer. And Nia had just pulled that file through a whistleblower at the state attorney's office. She sat at her laptop that night, eyes scanning the screen, stomach sinking with every line. Use of excessive force during an arrest of a juvenile male, 17, resulting in hospitalization. Failure to activate body camera, reprimanded, reassigned. There it was. The pattern. And now she had proof. She turned to Jamari, who sat nearby on the couch, quiet, eyes on the news. Hey, she said. He looked up. We've got him. Jamari didn't smile. Not quite. But something in his chest lifted. Good, he whispered. Because I want them to know. I remember everything. That night, protesters stayed on the steps. Some brought sleeping bags. Others lit candles. A woman sang softly into the dark. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Inside, the chief tried to sleep in his office chair. And in a quiet motel room just outside of town, Officer Braxton sat alone, watching footage of the protest on his phone. His gun was on the table beside him. And for the first time in a long time, he looked afraid. The town hall hadn't seen this many people in years. Reporters crowded the rear wall, their cameras catching every twitch, every tear, every inch of the truth being pulled into the light. Locals sat shoulder to shoulder, black, white, Latino, old-timers who remembered the riots of '91, teenagers who'd never seen a real protest until this week. Marlo was holding its breath. At the front of the room, Nia Fields adjusted the mic. Her fingers were trembling, but her voice didn't shake. Not anymore. She held up a document. This is an internal misconduct report on Officer Ryan Braxton, dated 3 years ago, she began. It details an assault on a minor. 17 years old. Same as Jamari. The room fell into a stunned hush. Braxton was disciplined, but never prosecuted. He was transferred quietly, no public record, and landed here in Marlow, where he resumed patrol. No oversight. No warnings. She let the silence hang a moment longer. Let the truth burn. This is not an isolated incident. This is not one officer having a bad day. This is a system that protects itself, punishes its critics, and preys on the vulnerable. And my brother is not your scapegoat. A quiet sob broke from somewhere in the crowd. An older black man in the third row stood, his voice gravelly. They did the same to my nephew, he said. Pushed him down. Said he resisted. He's still got a scar over his eye. Someone else stood. A woman, young, white, holding her baby on her hip. My brother was arrested last summer for sitting outside our house, she said. Just sitting. They said he looked off. More voices followed. Names. Stories. Pieces of a town's shadowed history rising like ghosts from the floorboards. Nia stood still, letting it all wash over the room. This wasn't just about Jamari anymore. This was a reckoning. Across town, Jamari sat with his little brother, Isaiah, in the living room. They watched the live stream on an old laptop. Isaiah clung to his brother's arm, like he might float away. "That's you," he whispered. "They're talking about you." Jamari didn't answer. He couldn't, because hearing Nia's voice echo through those speakers, strong, unshakable, hit harder than anything that had happened on that sidewalk. She was turning pain into purpose, and the world was listening. Inside the police department, Captain Rhodes watched the same stream on mute. Behind him, the mayor paced. "This is a disaster," the mayor muttered. "We need a press release. Control the message. Something, anything." Rhodes didn't respond. He was staring at the folder on his desk. Braxton's file. Now unsealed. Now public. Everything he'd buried was out. That night, Nia stood outside on the courthouse steps. Protesters surrounded her with candles. Her voice cracked as she spoke again. "We don't just want apologies. We don't want promises. We want action. We want charges. And we want change." The crowd chanted back. "Charges. Change. Charges. Change." And somewhere in the back, a voice shouted, "Where's Braxton?" That question hung in the cold spring air, unanswered, but not for long, because Braxton was no longer hiding. He was driving, fast, headlights off, toward the town he thought he knew. And the town he never understood was finally rising to meet him. The sun hadn't fully risen when Ryan Braxton turned onto Cedar Street. He hadn't slept, hadn't shaved. His uniform shirt was wrinkled and clung to him with sweat. A pistol sat on the passenger seat beside him, loaded, the safety off. His eyes scanned the road like a man expecting ghosts. He had seen the coverage, the protest footage, the press conference. His name, no longer hidden behind vague terms like officer involved. It was out there, raw, real. He wasn't just a cop anymore. He was the face of what a town had finally chosen to confront. At 6:04 a.m., a cruiser spotted his vehicle parked illegally in front of Town Hall. Braxton wasn't inside. Officers fanned out in a quiet panic. The station had gone into unofficial lockdown. There were whispers he might try something reckless, try to silence the story, or worse, silence himself. But he didn't go to the courthouse. He didn't go to the police department. He went to the place he knew would hurt the most. He went to Jamari Fields' home. Nia had barely slept. Her laptop still glowed faintly on the kitchen table, documents open, red lines covering statements. The apartment smelled of cold coffee and exhaustion. She heard the car door first, then the footsteps on the stairs, then the knock. 3 firm hits. Just like that night. Denise moved instinctively toward the door, but Nia stopped her. "I've got it," she said quietly. She opened the door slowly. Braxton stood there. No badge, no uniform hat, just a face that had aged 10 years in 2 days. Nia didn't flinch. "You need to leave," she said. "I just want to talk. You forfeited that right the second you put your knee on my brother's spine." He looked past her, tried to see into the apartment. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." Nia stepped in his line of sight. "You didn't mean to get caught." His jaw tightened. "I did what I was trained to do." "No," she said. "You did what you've always done. You saw a black kid and decided he didn't belong." Braxton's hand twitched toward his waist, but there was no badge there. No gun now. Just muscle memory and shame. "Go home," Nia said coldly. "While you still can." Behind her, Jamari stepped into view. No words. No anger. Just a stare. And in that moment, Braxton looked smaller than ever before. He turned, walked back down the steps, each one heavier than the last. He didn't go far. As he reached his car, a swarm of unmarked vehicles closed in, agents from the Illinois Attorney General's office and the Civil Rights Division. They stepped out fast, efficient. Ryan Braxton once said, "You're under arrest for civil rights violations, excessive force, and falsifying an official report." No struggle, no words, just cuffs. The way it should have been, the way it never was. Until now. By noon, every station in the region was broadcasting the arrest live. Breaking, Marlowe officer taken into custody amid growing civil rights case. The image played on repeat. Braxton being walked to the car, head low, cameras flashing. Justice didn't look glamorous, but it looked real. That night, the community gathered again, this time in the gymnasium at Jamari School. It was packed. Hundreds of faces. Teachers, neighbors, old friends. Some holding signs. Some just holding hands. Nia stood at the front with her mother and Jamari beside her. She wore her suit. Jamari wore a simple black hoodie and jeans. His voice still wasn't loud. But when the crowd quieted and he stepped forward to speak, every ear leaned in. "I didn't think this would matter," he said. voice shaking. I thought it'd just happen and be over. Like it always is. He paused. But you showed up. You didn't let it go. He looked out over the crowd. His voice steadier now. I thought I was alone. But I'm not. And I want other kids like me to know they're not alone either. Applause filled the gym. Loud. Long. Outside, the candlelight vigil glowed again. Only this time, it wasn't morning. It was a promise. 3 weeks later, the Justice Department launched a federal probe into the Marlow Police Department. Nia's lawsuit moved forward. Braxton remained in custody without bail. The town began reviewing every arrest made under his name, and others began coming forward. A history no longer hidden. Jamari returned to school. Slowly. Quietly. The hallway stairs faded. The whispers turned to knots. He wasn't a headline anymore. He was a survivor. A witness. And Nia? She stayed. At least for now. Because the fight wasn't finished. But they'd won a battle. And in towns like Marlow, sometimes one battle is all it takes to start a revolution. This wasn't just a story about Jamari. This was a story about a system and what happens when people finally say, no more. If this moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? And what part of this story hit you hardest? We read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories like this, because silence is no longer an option. Goodbye.